Welcome to this week's edition of The Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. I'm your host, Tony Simeone, and joined as always by Dick Corbett, head coach for Notre Dame Football, Brian Kelly. It's now time for this week's game breakdown with the head coach, Brian Kelly. And coach, 2 weeks in a row now, opening drive, I think really good for your offense. Jack Cohn was 4 for 4 just like he was in week 1 against Florida State. What'd you like on that opening drive?
Well, again, I think the balance, and I think we played fast. You know, there was some tempo to our offense, and it's probably something that we have to continue to do because we look really good. We got off to the fast start again like we did against Florida State, but it seems like the middle part is where we seem to bog down a little bit. But, Jack making the right reads, getting some explosive plays. We got the help right out of the gates with a 15-yard penalty on a face mask. Avery Davis makes a nice catch and a run after that, and, really got ourselves into a really good flow and a good position offensively right out of the gates.
I know you're trying to limit the big plays. Defense gave up a couple, but they bent and didn't break. Nobody got in the end zone. They didn't allow an offensive touchdown until the fourth quarter. So when the defense was doing that, what'd you like from them that at least kept it to 3s instead of 6s and 7s?
Well, again, we limited big plays. We didn't have the big plays that later kind of haunt us. And so, fundamentally sound, guys being in good position and forcing them down the field. And a good, as you mentioned, holding them to field goals. We'll take those exchanges because, again, we turned the ball over a few times. They had the sack fumble where we hold them to 3. So our defense did a really good job in that period of time when, again, offensively, we get to a great start, but we don't maintain that momentum.
You start the second quarter leading 7-6, and you go to the freshman, Tyler Buckner. Just talk me through the decision to bring him in and then what you saw from him, because it seemed like he really injected some life into the offense.
Well, we were backed up, as you remember, and that's a place where you want to rely on your run game. And what Tyler does is he gives us some versatility in the running game. So, you can run the zone. You can run the zone with the read. You kind of open up your playbook a little bit. And so I thought, in talking to Tom Reese, that it was a good time to get Tyler in the game. And it proved to be a really good decision because he got us out of that tough territory and ended up marching all the way down the field and getting a big score.
Yeah, on the score, Kyron Williams finally gets loose. You think that was a byproduct of Tyler being in the game and that gave him and the offensive line a little bit more of an opportunity to run block?
Yeah, no doubt. You get much more favorable looks because you have to defend the entire width of the formation now. Now you're not just worried about certainly the inside zone play. If he pulls it, he's on the perimeter. So you're just keeping people, I think, at check in terms of not being able to overload one way or the other.
So it was 14-6. Toledo, again, another field goal, 14-9. And then the pick 6 before halftime. I'm just curious, what was the mindset like? What was the attitude on the sideline when that happened and Toledo took their first lead? What'd you see from your team?
Not much. I mean, I think they were pretty, I think the one thing they did a nice job with the sideline, because we made it a point of emphasis, is that we didn't want anybody too high. We didn't want anybody too low. We wanted kind of a flat line approach to it. Be positive at all times. Stay in the game, communicate what's going on out there. And I thought they did a pretty good job, even after the pick 6.
Third quarter starts, and no points actually scored in the third quarter, which I think is a testament to the defense. No offensive touchdowns again until the fourth quarter. A guy that stuck out that I want to hear you talk about is J.D. Bertrand.
Yeah.
He had a big sack in the third quarter. Just what have you seen from him as he's developed here in this year?
Well, consistency. I think more than anything else, the last 2 weeks he's played consistent football. I mean, he's played a lot of snaps, but he's doing his job. And I think when you do your job as one of the 11 players on the field, good things are happening. And what we need to do is we got to get the other 10 guys to do their job consistently, not 70 out of 80 plays. And that's really where we're at right now defensively. We've got guys playing really well for 70, but there's 10 plays in there that we're missing an assignment, not making the correct decision on how to execute a technique. And JD's been really consistent.
You're trailing by 2 late in the third, and for the second straight week, you hit a big screen pass to Kyron Williams. I thought one of the best individual efforts from him I've seen. What'd you see on that play that set up the Jonathan Dorr field goal to give you guys the lead again?
Well, we just lost, we were down to our third tackle, so they had their ears pinned back. They were really looking forward to pass rush. So, we had a heavy pass rush. We needed to slow it down a little bit, so it seemed to be the best time for a screen. We ran what we call our Wrangler screen in that situation, a little bit different than the screen we ran against Florida State, so they hadn't seen it before. And we got some good blocking on the perimeter. And Kyron, as you mentioned, made two people miss, cut back against the grain, picked up a big first down.
So some signs of life there in the early portions of the fourth quarter. And we talked going into this week, the crowd being back, being something that was exciting. They actually helped you guys, maybe forcing a couple of false starts.
Yeah.
Were you feeling that energy? Did it feel a lot different this week after last year?
Yeah, it was much better. Certainly you're comparing it to Florida State, which wasn't, obviously a friendly crowd, and then COVID, which there was nobody there. So you had to kind of harken back a couple of years. But yeah, you could feel it. They were definitely helpful, especially when Florida State was on offense. And you could feel, I think everybody's kind of transitioning back, We didn't have all the fans there yet. Hopefully we'll get them all back here for the Purdue game. But I think everybody's kind of transitioning back to college football.
The next play on the next drive, you go back to Tyler Buckner, and I think this is where he's a weapon, is you see that 55-yard pass to Chris Tyree for the touchdown. How did that play develop, and what did you see from your offense?
Yeah, we had a rail route to him, but they blitzed the corner off the back end, and that's a very difficult play. You have to move your feet, you have to change your arm angle, you have to do a lot of things that you just don't teach. Right? You might go over it, but you still have to make a play. And he was moving to his left. He's a right-handed quarterback. He's got somebody in his face, so he's got to be calm that, he's going to be able to, get the ball off. And he did a really, really good job of getting the ball out to Chris Tyree. He makes the safety miss, and it's to the end zone.
24-16 at that point. And to me, watching the game, this is where you guys usually put the game away.
Yeah.
Put your foot down defensively, run the ball down their throat and end it. And it didn't happen this time. So as you evaluate the performance, what are you guys addressing to try to make sure that happens next time?
Well, it was the big play run. We had a missed call and a missed assignment that puts us in a vulnerable situation, which, turns out to be that big run. And look, we had him in a great situation. We had him backed up. We had a chance. We were feeling pretty good on offense. We get the ball back there and go up 31-16, the ball game's over. And we didn't do it. We let them off the hook. We give them a big play. They score. They get back in the game. And now you got to fight right to the very end.
When they ran it in, I want to ask you one question as a coach. And DeQuan Finn ran it in. Were you thinking at all, if he goes down, maybe they can run the clock out? And as a coach, have you ever, it's tough to teach that, obviously, to a player.
Well, we have a drop call, okay, for our running backs in those situations. And, you're in the mix of the game. Sometimes that's difficult from that far out. I think if they're probably 10 yards closer, maybe that call is made as a drop call to get down because clearly if they step out of bounds on the 2 or 3 yard line, they're going to make us use another timeout, and they could kneel it out to have the last shot at a field goal and win the game. So
29-24, your team's trailing with about 90 seconds left. Again, I'm always just curious, the environment on the sideline. You said there wasn't a lot of panic. You're going back to Jack Cohn. What'd you see when you looked at him and sent him back out there for that drive?
Yeah, we've done this before. We work on it every Wednesday. We put about 90 seconds on the clock. We give him one timeout, and you got to go get 7 points. And he's pretty good at it. And we call similar plays, so he was very comfortable with what the play calls were, and made a couple of really good plays.
We'll get a chance to look at the Michael Mayer touchdown that won the game during our Irish Intel segment, but of course everyone talking about the dislocated finger. Just have you seen anything like that before in your coaching career where someone had to get it popped back in and then throw the game winner right after
I'm
that?
I'm sure we've had that before, but under those kind of circumstances, no. That was... that's kind of a made-for-TV movie script. But no, he's a tough kid, and he felt like there was no ill effects, that he could grip the ball fine, and it turned out to be the case.
You guys then go for two. I'd say one of the more adventurous two-point conversions I've seen. They sniffed it out pretty well, it seemed like, and a great freestyle from Avery Davis.
Yeah, they had an overload to the quarterback side, which is kind of unusual. I don't know if they lined up correctly or not, but as the reverse came back, they had two defenders there. And because if one defender takes the quarterback, Avery just can run it in. But they had an overload there. Avery saw it, stopped, came back. The linemen know it's a pass, so they're not going to be downfield. So now it's just a matter of Avery, as a former quarterback and a really good one in high school, makes an easy throw.
So your defense still to come up with one more stop, and they do. Myron Tagovailoa-Amosa makes the big strip sack at the end. To get off the field like that, I know it's been a tough month for him with the sudden passing of his father. For him to come up with that big play, what did that mean for him?
Yeah, anytime he can cap off a very difficult month with a great play. This is, a young man that's going through a very difficult time. So if he can get some satisfaction for a moment and helping a win for his teammates, and that's how he sees it. This isn't about me. This is about winning for my teammates, and that's what makes him a special kid.
You get to the locker room after a 3-point win like that. Just what's the message to the team?
Again, we have to prepare better. We're happy with the win. It's hard to win, but let's be honest, our preparation has to be better because we have to eliminate these mistakes and we have to coach better. So preparation is about coaching, it's about playing, it's about all of those things during the week so you can execute better on Saturday.
Coach, thanks. You're listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. Welcome back to The Brian Kelly Show. It's time for this week's installment of Irish Intel, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for Irish Intel. We're going to go inside some of the big plays from Saturday's win for Notre Dame. Coach, let's look at this one first. This is that 55-yard touchdown pass from Buckner to Tyree. And let's start with pre-snap. What's he looking at here in the formation?
Yeah, so he's looking at the coverage here, and he sees that he's probably going to get too deep or this corner is going to fire because you can see that he's pressed, and they had not pressed into the boundary. So Tyree is going to go in motion. And now the fun starts because the corner does blitz, which puts now, in this situation, the backside safety's got to get all the way over to help, and he's just not going to catch Tyree. So perfect play call against the defense that you do not want to be blitzing the corner on because there's no real coverage. You can see right here, it's either the inside linebacker or the backside safety's got to take Tyree. So when Tyree goes in motion, they have to bump this all the way across, and they just don't do a very good job of it.
All right, Coach, we're going to take a look here at one of your rising stars on the defense. Bertrand picked up a big sack in the second half. Just talk me through this play.
Yeah, so this is really a simple weak side pressure where we're pressuring the back. So the back has protection here, and we know it. So we're blitzing the back, so to speak. And that matchup we like. That back's got to come up and pick up Bertrand on this. And you can see that's going to be a very difficult matchup for him.
So he's going to blow up the back and pick up the sack on the day. But when we get a second look at this, we're going to see it from behind. This is something I want to ask about because I saw it from him last week against Florida State too. As he approaches the quarterback, his left hand is up. Explain why you coach this way.
Yeah, left hand for a right-handed quarterback. Obviously, getting that hand up is obviously the distracting principle. But many people leave their feet here. We do not leave our feet. We keep running. The left hand goes up in this instance, and he keeps attacking the quarterback. That's just good fundamentals. He's well coached, but he's a guy that follows through with those technical things that make him a really, really good player.
All right, Coach, let's talk through the game-winning touchdown pass. First things first, Jack Cohn dealing with a finger here, had to go get it set back in. Have you ever seen this before?
Yeah, Mike Payne, he's been here over 25 years. He gets his 5 minutes of notoriety. It was awesome for Mike and his family, but he gets the finger set back in, and now we have choice on. This is 4 vertical. We've got the perfect coverage, and Mike Mayer's got a read route here. He's going to read, is the middle of the field open or is the middle of the field closed? If the middle of the field's open, he's going to work off this linebacker and he's going to bend it back into the middle of the field. If it was closed and the safety was there, he would have stayed up the hash. You can see it's open, he bends inside. That's the way you draw it up.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's Look Ahead, where we highlight Notre Dame's upcoming opponent. Welcome back. It's now time for this week's Look Ahead segment. We're joined by, as always, Bill Reese. Bill, thanks as always for taking some time with us. Before we look ahead at Purdue, let's look back at last week and Notre Dame's victory over Toledo. I think the story that stuck out to everyone, of course, was both quarterbacks being in the game. The Irish fans got a chance to see Tyler Buckner for the first time, who's a little bit of a different style quarterback than that of Jack Cohn. What stuck out from him when you saw him on the field for the first time in live action?
Well, first, it was really good to be back at Notre Dame Stadium with fans, and the atmosphere leading up to the game. It was very exciting, especially for the players and the ones that hadn't had an opportunity to witness being a part of that situation in the pregame and so forth. It was really, really fun to see everybody back. Playing 2 quarterbacks can be tricky sometimes, but these 2 guys really complement one another. They pull from one another. Jack Cohn has been outstanding, really did a great job throwing the football again last week. His leadership, his poise, all those things were outstanding. And, Coach Kelly wanted to make, a change to give the offense a little bit of a spark. It was a perfect situation to insert Tyler at that point of the game, and he responded tremendously for this first time playing at Notre Dame Stadium. And, he was very focused. He was very tough, didn't shy away from anything. The moment wasn't too big for him. And he led us on a 96-yard touchdown drive. So it was a great start for him.
You mentioned the poise of Jack Coan. Everyone's been, they've been very reverential of how he's handled the whole process. Like you said, was Tyler's biggest cheerleader on the sideline, I think. But then to have the poise to come in and still orchestrate that drive at the end. How difficult is that when you're not maybe taking every snap to come in and orchestrate the drive that he did under those circumstances?
Well, I think it just shows you, his intelligence, his concentration. Sometimes you can learn a lot by watching, and taking a play or two off sometimes can help. Where a quarterback can sit back, watch, and when he's inserted back into the game, he sees the big picture. Jack's very smart. He really understands, what we're trying to do offensively. He was excellent in that what was about a 35-second drive, but he really did a great job. He's a guy that has great toughness as well. And, we're going to make a lot out of that, pulling that finger back into his joint. But I'll tell you what, that had to have hurt. He got right back in there, delivered the winning pass, and not many guys could do that.
You mentioned the winning pass. It was Michael Mayer that caught the go-ahead and eventual game-winning touchdown. I think it's just his second season, but it seems like it's sometimes easy to forget of how dominant he is so early on in his career. And it seems like anytime Jack Coan's needed to go to somebody in a big spot, it has been Michael Mayer. That's the first guy he's looking for. Just how impressive has he been so early in his career to you? And maybe what are a couple of the traits when you watch him on film that stick out that make him unique?
Well, he's a complete player, and part of it is he's so highly motivated. He has such an intensity to him. He has a desire to be great, and he wants to learn to do the little things very well. It's hard to believe he's still only a sophomore, and this is his, third game as a sophomore coming up this week. He just, takes things to a level that, few people at his age have done. He's a perfectionist. He wants to be an outstanding blocker. He wants to be able to run great routes. He's hard on himself when he doesn't come up with the ball. But there isn't anybody you'd want more on third down to be running a route from a tight end spot than Michael Mayer, because he's going to find a way to get open. Very gifted athletically, obviously, very strong. But he's going to continue to get better and better.
As we kind of look at the other side of the football, I think there's a tendency to maybe look at the scoreboard again and say 29 points and a couple of big plays that I know the team has been vocal about. They want to clean up and limit the big chunk plays that they've been giving up on defense. But no offensive touchdowns were scored until the fourth quarter in that game against Toledo. The Irish, I thought, did a great job of holding Toledo to just field goals, even when they were able to move the ball at times throughout that game. What improvements did you maybe see on the defense? And what are some of those things that are starting to click a little bit more maybe on the defensive side of the football after 2 weeks under Marcus Freeman?
Well, I think defensively, they're still learning a new system as well and still getting to know one another, very similar to the offensive line on offense. It takes sometimes a little while to gel, but they've come up big when they needed to, came up big in the overtime against Florida State. Had a chance for a couple of interceptions on Saturday. That one was overruled that Kyle Hamilton had. Another one was in the hands of Cam Hart and didn't come up with it. So they're getting better. The tackling was good Saturday. Guys are really playing hard. They run to the football. It's an exciting defense, and it creates havoc. And it's like anything else. Sometimes it takes a few games to kind of get an understanding of where everybody fits, where everybody is on defense, and very encouraged by the defense overall.
Let's turn our attention now to next week's opponent, looking ahead at Purdue. They come in with a record of 2-0. Always great to get a regional rival back in South Bend for Notre Dame to go up against. 30-21 victory over Oregon State in week 1, and then 49-0 against a UConn team they just overmatched this past weekend. We can get to some of the specific players in a second, but Jeff Brom trying to take this program back to where it's been in the past. Just what stands out to them in general when you look at them on film?
Well, we really have great respect for Jeff Brom. We think he's really one of the best coaches in the country. He's an excellent offensive coach. He's an excellent play caller, and they're vastly improved from a year ago. They've brought in a few transfers that have helped their depth, that have helped them in a number of areas. They solidified their offensive line. They're getting very good quarterback play. And that just complements what Jeff Brom wants to do. And that's going to have a balanced attack. He's going to be able to spread the ball around. He's going to be able to run it. He's very creative. And then on defense, they've done the same thing. They're playing with a lot of energy. They have simplified some things. They're really a much improved team, and they're a little more experienced than what people may think.
Let's talk quarterback. You mentioned they're getting great performance right now from Jack Plummer. When you look at his numbers, again, early and small sample set, but 73% completion so far in the year, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Specifically with him, what sticks out from him and what's going to be the challenge he presents the Notre Dame defense on Saturday?
Well, you hit it on the head. He's hitting 73%, but if you go back to a year ago, he was just right around that as well. He's a very efficient, very accurate passer. He does a nice job of being able to throw the ball to all levels with touch, timing, pace. He sets up well. He understands coverages. He is very accomplished, and he'll be a handful because of his accuracy and because of his experience.
The receivers, David Bell and Payne Durham, so far are going to put some pressure on the secondary. It looks like both averaging over 85 yards per game. Bell's up close to 130 again in the 2 games that they've played so far this year. What will the secondary have to key on against those two as they pose a threat on the outside?
Well, David Bell is as good a receiver as we'll see all year. He made an instant impact in the Big Ten when he came in as a freshman. He was freshman player of the year in the Big Ten. I think he had 86 catches his first year. He's had 3 games. He's had 2 that have had 13 catches, and he's had 1 that's had 14 catches. So they know how to get him the ball. He's a strong runner after the catch. He's been very productive as a runner after the catch. He's not, a blazer, but he has very good functional speed. He's an excellent route runner, very smart, knows how to, get open and work defenders. He's a big play guy, and you got to know where he's at, and they'll move him around. So they'll try to get a mismatch anytime they can.
Running game, I know they've got a few different guys they can hand the ball to, but of course the recent development this week with some injury news in that backfield. What can you tell us about the Purdue backfield going into this game?
Well, they're starting running back. Horvath broke his fibula last week, so he won't be playing. And ironically, he's from South Bend, went to Marion High School, and was an extremely important and versatile player for them because not only could he run the ball, he was a very good receiver for them as well. And he was big. He was 6'2.5", about 230 pounds. So he was a very versatile weapon for him. But they have a couple of good backs that are big and have good instincts, and they'll continue to run the ball. That's part of their offense.
Let's look at the other side of the ball, defense. And the guy that sticks out, I think everyone's going to get to know his name on Saturday, is George Karloff, this defensive end that a lot of people think can likely go in the first round of the upcoming NFL draft. When you watch him on film, what stands out? And again, it's a Notre Dame offensive line that's battling some injury concerns now. What's going to be the key concern for them keeping him away from the quarterback next weekend?
Purdue's had a long line of really good defensive ends, and George is going to be as good, if not better, than the ones that they've had there in the past. He has an excellent combination of size, speed, strength. He's up to about 270, 272, can really run, uses his hands very well. great instinct. We're going to have a plan for him and know where he's going to line up.
In the secondary, it's a veteran secondary. You got Corey Trice and Cam Allen, who are in their third year starting for this team. I always look at secondary and think, if you have veterans back there, that can sometimes make up maybe for a lack of skill or physical ability, if that is the case. So when you have a veteran secondary, how difficult will that be to navigate for Notre Dame next weekend?
Well, not only their experience, they have excellent size. They have a corner that's 6'2". They have their other corner 6 foot. A couple of their safeties are both 6'1", and they can run. And like you said, they're experienced. So they have a new defensive coordinator. They're playing, I think, with a lot of confidence. They're doing a great job of keeping things in front. They can mix up zone, man, press. They're a confident group, and we're going to have our work cut out for us, getting open against these guys because, they do a good job of mixing things up.
It's going to be the first, Power 5 team to come into South Bend with a full house here, a Big Ten team, always a good barometer. I guess just after we've talked through it all here, what do you think the biggest key will be for Notre Dame to get a victory next weekend?
Well, I just think overall consistency. I think we just have to be more consistent on both sides of the ball. I think we're going to have to hang on to the ball. The 3 turnovers last week were something that it was not typical of the Notre Dame offense. And, we have to hang on to the ball, get a couple of takeaways and just continue to play consistent, sound football.
Bill, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for looking ahead at Purdue with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
You're welcome. Talk to you next week.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's edition of Irishography. So JD, you're off to a great start this year. You've led the team in tackles in each of the last 2 games, 3rd in the country in solo tackles. Just what have you been able to do to develop and put yourself in this position this year?
I think the biggest thing that I've done to put myself in this position is just trusting Coach Kelly's process, trusting the Notre Dame process. Obviously, you come in and everyone thinks everyone wants to have the Kyle Hamilton career where you come in and play right now, but Notre Dame does a great job developing us and just being able to, as you go on, let the game kind of transitions and slows down. And so just being able to get stronger and learn the game and learn our defense and just going from there, just being able to take any opportunity I have. And I've been given opportunity this year and just trying to make the most of it.
At the end of the game, you were given the game ball. I just want to ask, anytime you get the game ball, it has to be an amazing emotion. What goes through your head, and what was it like to get it after the game in the locker room in front of your teammates?
Receiving the game ball, it was just an awesome moment. It's kind of surreal. You see it on Twitter when you're a commit, and then even redshirt year, you see guys getting it, and you kind of almost sit there sometimes can that be me? But obviously, it was just an awesome moment, and just I was incredibly happy. But obviously, I couldn't do that without my teammates, and obviously my coaches and teammates put me in the position to make plays and be able to have the opportunity to receive this ball.
I've heard a lot of people say you're going to come to Notre Dame and you're not going to change Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to change you. Now that you've been here for a while, what's one of the changes that Notre Dame has had an impact on you?
I truly believe Notre Dame's going to change you, just in the sense that the community, just being able to make friends in the short time that I've been here, just within the football team, within other athletes, through the dorms. It feels so much more than just going to college. It really does feel like a family and a community.
What did the alma mater feel like with everyone back in the house?
It's just different. Last year sitting there and you're looking at a couple of students, teachers, family, but this year it's just you just feel it all. It's a full 360 view.
I know it's early right now, but big game coming up against Purdue next week. What's maybe the biggest key for you guys on the defensive side of the ball to get a win next week against the Boilermakers?
For us to get that win, it's just going to be coming down to execution and making sure we focus on the little details of our defense and the little details of understanding their offense.
JD, thanks for the time.
No problem. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's final check-in.
Hello, Coach. On Monday, you talked about the things that you had to do with Karloff, but I'm wondering more about Bell, defending him, and he works a lot underneath, and most of what he gets is after the catch. So what do you have to do to defend him, differently, I guess, than like a W receiver that lines up wide? Does a nickel have to chase him, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, he creates issues, right? I mean, if you're playing man to man, his runs after the catch, are deadly. So you have to employ, a variety of looks. You've got to be in some bracket coverage. You've got to be in some, trail coverage. You've got to be able to play some robber. It's really about a variety of different looks. So it really stresses what you do relative to your normal coverages. If you just played him in man, you're gonna obviously be in a very difficult position. So mixing it up, playing some bracket, doubling him, making it difficult for him to know what he's getting, and for the quarterback, especially in third down situations.
John Finneran, you're up next.
Hi, Brian. Wondering
Hey, John.
if you could talk to us about the preparation that you've seen from your team this week, the intensity you've had on the practice field. The players talked about it the other day, that it was very intense. And also give us an update on the injury situation on your team with Carmody and some of the others.
Yeah, so the first 2 weeks of the season were not a typical in-season, preparation. We were coming off a long camp, with Florida State, and, we were really in a maintenance mode relative to that, week leading into Florida State. We had been in a long camp. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have camp legs. So you're not really ramping things up, going into that week. You're trying to manage things. And then we came off the short week going into week 2. So you're really affected for 2 weeks with a Sunday game. And this is really the first week where we're really in the routine. And so we're able to get after it the way we normally do. So, Tuesday and Wednesday were what we're used to in terms of, traditional practices on a week leading into a Saturday game. So it might have felt ramped up to the guys, and I can understand that. But all I was doing was getting us back to where we really should be relative to our preparation. And, I've always believed that, you don't raise your level of competition, you just raise your level of preparation. And we raised our level of preparation this week. As it relates to the injuries, Carmody's making pretty good progress during the week. That'll be a game time decision, and seeing, Jeff will assess who's in a better position. Again, as I mentioned, we're going against one of the best pass rushers in the country. So in some instances, he might be ready, but we've got to be able to evaluate him against one of the best in the country. Other guys that, I don't know that we really had anybody else that was, in that situation. Botello is available, and he will play. And Diggs is available, and he will play.
Eric Hansen, you're up next.
Brian, following up on Botello, what's your expectation for him? And not just this week, but as you go through the season, does he give you some position flexibility? And then also Xavier Watts, I don't think he played as a rover, but played on special teams. How is he adapting and getting to a point where maybe he can help you with some depth?
Yeah. Jordan's a guy that I think can help us, at that Viper position. He brings pass rush ability. I think he brings third down in particular, depth for us in terms of rushing the passer. We were a little thin there, and I think that's going to be really welcomed to our unit. I think when we're talking about Xavier, the game was in a position where we didn't, we thought we'd be able to get him in a limited role. We were still in a situation where we needed to play a multiple call defense, and he wasn't ready to do that. We're getting him closer to that, and we expect him to contribute for us this year on the defensive side of the ball.
Pete Sampson, you're up next.
Brian, and a couple. One, just on Jack Kaiser, I was curious if you could revisit the recruiting process with him and if you remember anything about going down to Royal Center. And then also on the quarterback situation, we had with Buckner, Cone, and Payne, like, do the way you divide up reps during the week change because of, you know, what you saw last weekend and some of the opportunities that you have with multiple quarterbacks now?
Yeah, I remember going down. We took a helicopter down to see Kaiser. They were. I think they were in the playoffs or deep into the playoffs, or maybe they had lost the first round. I can't remember specifically, but it was it was a quick trip down, certainly, and again, just to have that kind of player in this geographical area, you want to make sure that you're making them feel it, and so getting on a helicopter, making our presence known in the area was really part of the whole process, and wanting him to feel special, and how much we wanted him to come to Notre Dame, because we obviously a great player, but he's such a great fit, great student, so well regarded. So I remember that clearly about the recruitment of him. As it relates to the quarterbacks, all three of them are getting reps. Jack still continues to be the starter, so he's getting the bulk of the reps. But as I think I said this after the game, we'll continue to grow the package for Tyler as it relates to what his skill set is. So that continues to grow, and then Drew needs to get those reps to keep him sharp. So it's a management of those three, and feel very comfortable with it. Don't feel like we're shorting anybody in one particular area.
Patrick Engel, you're up next.
Brian, when you mentioned the possibility of more of a rotation on that interior offensive line, I'm curious what you've seen from guys like Rocco or Christophic or Dirksen, who might be part of that rotation if that's the way you go.
Yeah, I think we have to. I think they're getting so many snaps, and Zeke in particular and Kane, need a blow, and Andrew Christophic is probably the first guy, and then I think Rocco and John, in that order. But I think you'd see probably Andrew as the first man in. And we really like what he's been doing. He's been playing some center, he's been playing some guard, and really like his development. So expect to see him playing some guard, on Saturday.
Len Clark, you're up next.
Brian, what challenges will Plummer present to you defensively? He looks comfortable in the pocket, but they also roll him out.
Well, he's extremely accurate. I think that's probably the most, challenging part. He's extremely accurate. He knows where to go with the football. He's got two outstanding weapons. And look, at the end of the day, he keeps plays alive, and he doesn't take sacks. He gets rid of the football. So, I think, more than anything, you have a pro style quarterback that doesn't make, big mistakes. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't take negative plays, and he's extremely accurate. So that in itself, is probably, the biggest strengths that he brings. And is probably why he's the starter.
All right. Final call for questions. Anybody has a question, please raise your hand. Oh, we got one. Tyler Horka, you are next. We got two. Tyler Horka, then Tim O'Malley.
Hey, Brian, I'm just curious how you would assess how the return game has done so far. I know a lot of people were excited about Chris Tyree and what he could do and have a better year than he did last year in that regard. But it seems like we've seen a lot of fair catches, especially on some balls that he could, take and try to get a return.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the first game. We lost some key return men to injury. And so I chose to fair catch those balls in lieu of not taking anything less than the 25-yard line on the fair catch. I think we're in a better position going into the Toledo game, and we want to continue to work towards being a better return team, and I think we will be, because Chris, we want to give him a chance to return. And so I think the answer to the question is, once we are able to develop the new personnel on this group, the return team, we'll feel a whole lot better about our chances to be a really solid unit.
All right, we'll wrap it up with Tim O'Malley.
Coach, mine's really quick. We've seen a couple guys out of uniform, and we have assumed that JoJo Johnson and Iquanu are out for the season. Can you just confirm what happened to their injuries?
Yeah, JoJo has an ACL. He'll have surgery, I think, today. He is out for the season. And Osita had did he have surgery? I think he had surgery, Achilles in camp, and he too is out for the season.
All right, thanks, Coach. That's all the time we have.
All right, thank you.
Coach 2-0. I think everyone's happy with that. But you mentioned that your team maybe lacked a little bit of intensity early on in the game against Toledo. So going into the game against Purdue, how will you try to address that and improve it going into that game?
Yeah, I think it's all about routines, right? Let's get back to our routines. We haven't had the routine of, going through our normal Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And, we got back in last week at 4:30 in the morning on a Monday. We really couldn't get into our routine. So get back to our routines, and then a little bit more intensity through our repetition and preparation during the week, and pick that up a little bit. I think that's going to help us a lot as we get ourselves closer to game time. And then obviously understanding, we're not playing night games, we're playing in the afternoon. Get yourself mentally ready as you wake up and get closer to game time. So we'll get through all that this week. I think getting into this routine, it'll be really helpful for this team.
You guys are renewing a rivalry with Purdue, always a good matchup between you guys. They're coming off a 49-0 victory over UConn. When you've had a quick look at them on tape, what challenges do they present for you guys?
Well, Bell on offense, Plummer on offense, two dynamic players. Plummer is as accurate quarterback as there is in the country. Bell is one of the top wide receivers. He can take the top off of coverages. He's savvy, he's smart. Karloff is one of the best. George Karloff is one of the best defensive ends, and he's going to be a high draft pick in the NFL. So they have game wreckers. They have guys that you'll have to game plan against, and we haven't really had that, quite frankly. We have some good players that we're going against, but these are guys that you have to game plan against on both sides of the ball.
Coach, appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week after Purdue. You have been listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com.